Alright, welcome back to Game 10 of Lucid's 2022 tournament, where we are playing Phlegra. It is turn 74. Possibly going to see a non-aggression pack break? Nope, looks like they're just hanging out on our border. A giant mummy claims the Throne of Life. This is from Utgard. Possibly this is the throne that they grabbed from Atlantis. I'm not actually sure. I don't think there's any reason that you wouldn't claim the Throne of Life. You know, sometimes people don't like to claim, say, the Throne of Death. It gives your scales some extra death, which is kind of rough. Magic phase attack here. Not sure who it's from. Okay, this is a magic phase attack from Ulm against Marignon. Both of them, I think, can cast this spell. Going to be seeing a lot of demon stuff. Minimal province defense there, so that works out for Ulm. We're only going to be catching snippets of that war. I'm sure it's raging in many provinces, but we don't have a ton of scouts. This is another magic phase attack from Ulm, using some air gems. This spell, not super effective. Maybe going after a blood hunting province? No, it looks like it's just a province where Micklin has been capturing some of these slaves, which are not very good military units, but then again, neither are these birds. I do think the slaves are like acceptable siege chaff, but otherwise, you know, don't have a ton of uses. Yeah, so Micklin actually, no province defense on their capital, but they are patrolling with, you know, just some garbage to prevent being locked down from something like this, so nicely done. Of course, that won't stop any real attacks, but they have stuff that can stop real attacks. We've seen that in action on their throne. We have a ping from Marignon, and they just run into like a little squad of thralls and a black priest who's, I guess, maybe here just for Sermon of Courage. The Bless is only going to get himself, maybe also decent against demons since he is a priest level 2. Or maybe that's just the leadership that Ulm had available. Still a decent little squad that's, you know, pretty low investment to try to defend against raids. Right, and this is us breaking out of our fort, but just some unled Yetis. So Atlantis also true to their word. I didn't have any doubts on that, but still, always nice to have that confirmed. Then we have an attack by Marignon against Ulm. Probably, no, this is a pretty serious army here moving out, though it doesn't run into any resistance on Ulm's side. Probably headed towards some fortress, either to siege it or relieve it. So we'll have to see if we can keep tracking that army, catch an interesting battle. Then we have an attack from Micklin, probably a raid. Yeah, just a vampire count, I guess, and it runs into some birds, possibly some retreats. Maybe he was just using them as patrollers. So yeah, I think these birds are probably screwed. The vampires do have invulnerability, and I think just built-in life drain. So very unlikely those birds come away with it. There you go. Vampire Lord does beat just a bunch of birds. Then we have some unexpected events, bad omens. Losing some tax and a little bit of province income. Always sad about the province income. Barbarian scouts caught and interrogated. Refused to say anything about their purpose. Probably industrial espionage. There's no way a bunch of barbarians will attack that province next turn. Stars are right for constructions. We don't really have the gems to take advantage of this. And then one of our scouts gets patrolled out. I think this is a fellow that we just kind of had hanging out on top of Utgard's fort. Or their capital, actually. Utgard doesn't seem to do a lot of patrolling. They just sort of rely on like really high province defense, which is interesting. I mean, you know, once you get a province defense like this high, it's going to give you a decent chance every turn, you know, 10%, 15%, something like that, to be catching scouts. And, you know, it's sort of like set it once and then, you know, never, well, unless it gets destroyed. But there's no upkeep, right, to these units. So it is an interesting strategy, and, you know, I kind of see the value of it. Because it makes leaving scouts, you know, on top of their forts really annoying, and, you know, they have to pay for it the one time, yes, but then they don't pay upkeep on it. So a lot of people pretty against province defense, but, you know, like I said, Utgard seems to invest really heavily in it, just across the board, and definitely has some advantages. We are on top of a fort somewhere, so apparently we're not true to our word. I'm not sure. We must have accidentally left behind some unled unit. This is probably a retreat from some battle. That I did not realize was present. But we shouldn't have any commanders here, so I'll just reach out to Atlantis and let him know that, you know, he can exit the fort whenever he wants. And I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Not a whole lot to this turn. You know, we're continuing to just shift things into our throne fortifications. You know, we've talked about the pluses and minuses of that. If we have enough fire gems, which we definitely don't at this point, possibly do a little bit of trading for some of our lesser needed gem types, maybe like some air gems to someone. We managed to get a hold of some more fire gems. We do at least have the casters to put up I think it's like Flaming Dome of Death. Excuse me, the Dome of Flaming Death. So it's not a great dome for going up against giants, but at least the casters that we would be up against for Utgard probably would be human level HP, which would make life a lot more dangerous for them to be casting spells at us. But without that trading, right, since we're also thinking like, Flames from the Sky would be a nice thing, there's definitely no way that we can do both. There's really, we're probably going to have to pick, even if we do some trading, which throne fortification we end up putting the dome on. And then, we're doing a little bit of summoning here, some Pale Riders. We're bringing in some of those Green Lions up in the northern throne. We are forging a Skull of Fire, which is a booster that we're going to need, a fire booster that we're going to need in order to actually cast some of those spells we were just talking about. And then, continuing to shuffle units over in the direction, particularly in our southern throne. For the most part in the northern throne, we're in position. This is what we have. We're doing a little bit of recruitment in the capital. We're recruiting one of our cap-only mages. No more tyrants. We definitely don't have the money for that anymore. And then I think we have, another mage here that's about to finish. And then I think we're getting another, nope, I think that's it as far as mage recruitment goes. So yeah, really just, kind of digging or trying to dig in for this inevitable blow that we've kind of been expecting the whole game. We do see Atlantis moving, there's a golem here now. There's a few other smaller forces moving forward. So, I'm sure they'll set themselves up to grab a lot of our territory once these hammer blows finish. Or rather, once they fall. And, that's the choice that we've made, right? It's, either try to put up a credible defense against this or give up our 2 thrones and try to fight Atlantis. So yeah, that's really the sum of it. I have not come up with a specific defense plan, right? I mean, really, it's just try to bring in whatever we can. Obviously, in the north here, we'll have Wailing Winds, which will be fairly useful. We'll see if Utgard decides to cast Growing Fury. Obviously, all their sacreds here are berserkers. The wolves might actually be berserkers as well. So if they're able to trigger the berserk for all those units, then, Wailing Winds isn't really going to matter. But they may not want to do that if they want to bring mage support in. And, berserking your mages, human mages in robes, that's not great. So if they don't choose to berserk their own forces, right, then we're probably going to try to just use the gap. Particularly, we don't have a ton of nature mages, but we do have a few that can, jump into a communion and hopefully throw out things like Sleep Cloud. Really, we just want to choke the gap and kind of prevent very much combat from happening. Because that means, a lot fewer of their sacreds will go berserk, and then they still have a chance to be routed by Wailing Winds. So we may actually put up Storm again, despite the fact that we have mostly crossbowmen. That's definitely, I don't know. I am often in these more late game scenarios where we're pretty heavily outnumbered, or at least pretty heavily outclassed, if not outnumbered. I'm always concerned about mass flight. Now, mass flight is not something that Utgard can do nationally very easy, but I mean, what is it, turn 74? They definitely could have some indie mages, out there that's going to give them some air access. We don't really see evidence of that, but there's so many units here and so many giants that, if there's just a couple air mages, they may not show up in the scout report. And mass flight would be pretty disastrous for us, but normally I don't think Storm is something you're going to want to be casting as Phlegra a lot. So, in some ways we have needed to cast Storm a couple of times, but that's partially just because we've gotten kind of unusual luck, right? We've gotten a lot more air mages, I think, from indies than you would normally get with Phlegra, so we've wanted to cast Storm more. But that's definitely worked against us, in an anti-synergy in terms of us having armies primarily of crossbowmen. So I'll have to think on that. Of course, also, we have enough nature mages to also be making bugs, which, will help at least choke the gap, though with their armor negating damage, they will trigger berserk. And then behind all that, especially in the north here, we have the Gifts of Heaven, kind of similar plans in a lot of ways, what we were trying to pull off, previously. Just, this time we'll also cast Serpent's Blessing, right? So we don't get destroyed by foul vapors. And we may also throw up Firestorm to get rid of the skeleton spam. Though if we're hiding in the fort, the skeleton spam maybe is less relevant, and of course there definitely is some danger for our kind of squishy human mages with Firestorm. We will of course throw up probably Army of Gold. We have enough Astral Mages here that I think we can cast a separate anti-magic. So we should be relatively safe against Firestorm, but, compared to Giants, right, our mages are definitely going to die before the Giants do. The other problem with Firestorm, of course, is it will trigger Berserk. So, we'll see. Those are like kind of some of the elements that I'm thinking about, but haven't come up with a full plan really for either throne. Not really a lot of point in coming up with a plan. Like, we don't even have the forces in place, really. So, hopefully we really need like 2 more turns to actually get like the majority of our forces. So, we're moving, some of what we can directly into the throne, but the majority of it cannot 1 turn move into the throne location. So we'll end up here next turn, and then hopefully we'll have 1 more turn to get into our throne. So yeah, that more or less covers it for us. We've mostly talked about the global situation. Like, not a lot has changed. We can see Mictlan is, raided out a little bit. Looks like this palisade is cracked. Now that Ulm is having to fight against Marignon as well, like, you can see that, Ulm does seem to be making some inroads. Or, I'm sorry, Mictlan does seem to be making some inroads against Ulm. So while I think it's, Mictlan is pretty much out of the running in terms of winning the game, I do think they have enough forces left to cause a considerable amount of problems for whoever they choose to go after, which at the moment looks like they're more going after Ulm. And then, of course, we don't know exactly what Utgard has planned. We have our suspicions, but, there's been no nap cancellation, haven't heard from the player, so, we'll see. And I think that more or less covers turn 74.